The Dice Tower, episode 606. So you say you want a revolution.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by Renegade Game Studios. Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, we talk a little bit of revolution, Mandi teaches me a new song, and we chat about the hot new deck building game app. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And both Mandi and I don't know if it comes across in the sound here, but both, Mandi, you're recovering from a pretty hefty flu, and I'm recovering from some weird cough thing.
Yeah, it was literally the flu and now sinus infection. So I'm pretty sure I sound really stuffy, so I apologize in advance.
You sound just lovely to me. It's nice to talk to you again.
You too.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We talk about board games and card games and more board games and apparently now app games too. And then sometimes we go to events involving those board games. So tell me about Comic-Con, Mandi.
Comic-Con, yes. So for those of you, I saw actually a few people at Comic-Con and even got to play some games. So shout out to Robert and Alice. Oh,
hi, Robert. Hi, Alice. Okay, Mandi, which Comic-Con? Because there's a lot of them out there now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Maybe I should specify. I assume being Canadian, everyone knows where I'm from, but this is Ottawa Comic-Con. So it's not as big as Toronto or some of the other ones, but, it's a staple. I've been going since they first started coming to Ottawa, and they've always been a really good time. The gaming area has evolved strangely with Ottawa Comic-Con. So before I jump into that, I just wanted to say I had an overall really good time, played a lot of games with some really fun people. And, it's always nice seeing the cosplay and that sort of thing and the booths and the people that come out. And I know the staff actually there very well because I've been going as media or going as a panelist for several years. So it's always nice to see them as well. And they're always so polite and friendly. So it's always a pleasure. Gaming this year was tough. And when I say tough, of course, they had an area within the hall to play. But last year, they had a dedicated room for games. And there was a library that was run. And it was a big area. So that's what I thought was going to happen this year. And I walked in and I said, oh, so there's no gaming area at all? There were about 8 tables set up by a particular gaming company in the actual hall. And that was it.
That was it?
That was it. Even gaming, like a board game, like booths, there's usually a lot more, significant booths that I know the companies, and I didn't see any of them there. So I think there were maybe about 2 or 3. And then there's one particular company set up some tables like on their own by their booth, and that was it. So I was surprised. And considering that, I'm there as a panelist to talk about board games, being involved in the board game world, I thought there would have been more of a connection there with that. Like last year, that room I thought was fantastic. It was always busy. It was always full. And that didn't happen. So I was a little disappointed with that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So did you just, for the gaming you managed to get in, were you just playing on those little 8 tables?
Yeah, pretty much. So I had a couple panels about, board gaming and that sort of thing. I did those. And then, I pretty much planted my buns down in the gaming area. I did my, jaunt around, chatted with people, and then sat down and we kind of took over half of a table and played games there. So, okay. Yeah. So, overall, it ended up really going well because I was, with some really fun people. But yeah, I hope they increase the gaming amount of, gaming tables in the area for next year's Comic-Con. I know, you're just like, don't know what to say.
Well, that's kind of a bummer, but yeah. It is a Comic-Con, and as much as I might like to infuse heavy board game influence at every geeky, fun event, pop culture event, I guess I can't be so presumptuous.
Yeah. Well, what about you? You also have done some traveling or attending an event.
I live in the Seattle area, And so West Coast based. And I took a very quick one-night hop over to Los Angeles. And I met up with James Hudson, who people might know from Druid City Games and with Skybound Entertainment. And Rodney Smith from Rocket Played was down there as well. Now, he was doing some stuff with this Above Board show that Tom's also involved in a little bit. But we were doing something different. I guess Skybound has a branch called Gamma Ray, which is more of a media production side, and they're trying to do a new kind of show as well. It's very clear that board games are becoming popular enough or interesting enough that people want to expand the media around them and the content around them. And so Gamma Ray TV is trying to do kind of an interview-based show where James Hudson just talks to people about games. And it's really focused on a personal side. How did you get into gaming? And what is it about gaming that is meaningful to you? And it kind of, to center it, they ask you to focus on a single game. And so for me, I talked about Robo Rally, and I brought my 25-year-old copy of Robo Rally down with me, and it was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful production, very professional, and they shot like a show intro using my copy of Robo Rally. They had it all set up, and they elevated it, and they had like camera on this rack that was sliding around, and I swear I've never seen that game look so good in my life. It looked awesome. So I don't know what's ever going to come of it, quite frankly, but if nothing else, I got to play a game with Rodney and James, who are friends of mine. I got to see the wonderful Dragon and Meeple Game Cafe down there in downtown Los Angeles. It was just lovely. It's only been open for a couple of months, and they're off to a great start. They had fried cheese curds that were amazing.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, let's get to the heart of the matter, right? Fried cheese curds and fried Brussels sprouts, and I was in heaven. So.
Literally to the heart of the matter, because it will be going straight to your heart.
Live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse, right? So that was my quick trip to LA. I hope that the show airs. It was a lot of fun to do. It's always nice to take a step back and really take a moment to process and think about how meaningful games are in my personal life and how much they've impacted me over the last quarter of a century. So that was, if nothing else, I was grateful for that opportunity.
Well, definitely, I'm sure a lot of us are looking forward to seeing, if something comes out of it. I mean, we can't help but want more gaming material online, TV, wherever we can get it.
And more games. Because I know you were chatting me up all about this hospital thing. So spill it.
Okay.
Are you breaking your kind of pullback from Kickstarter, Mandi? What's going on?
Yes, I've been very selective. Okay, prior to this, the last one was that I backed on Kickstarter was On Mars. And come on, it's a Vital Lacerda game. I believe it's Ian O'Toole art.
Yes.
So, hello, I had to back it. So that's just a given. So now I decided, let's do a little stroll on Kickstarter. I'm not really missing anything. Lies and deceit. Yes, I was. So I saw Clinic, which I'll be honest with you. I literally clicked the back button because I saw Ian O'Toole art and I'm like, oh, it's lovely. Back. Don't at me, okay? I can't help it. The art was fantastic. So then I looked a little deeper and decided to see, what am I backing? And so I do enjoy games thematically that have to do with hospitals or that kind of medical environment. My mother's a nurse. My best friend's a nurse. I'm surrounded by nurses and doctors. So I know a lot of people in the field, and something like this really appeals to me. And the designer, this is Albin Viard, and has done games like Tramways, Crisis, I believe, as well. And these are, just Tramways.
Tramways, Small Cities, Card City XL. Yeah.
My apologies. Small Cities, and Card City XL. My apologies. Yes, that's it. I'm picturing my shelf right now, and unfortunately, I have Crisis in between all of those games. Sorry. And brain burny games. Oh my goodness.
Very much so.
So good. And you and I were having a conversation about this particular game. And basically, what you're trying to do is, I think you're trying to build the most efficient hospital. and try to gain popularity. That's the gist of the game. It's kind of like tramways where you're trying to, keep your passengers happy and get them to their destinations. So I always find his games are the basis idea is very basic, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. It's how you have to get them to where they're going or get that end result done is the part where you go, my brain is melting out of my ears because it's just so crazy. But you had mentioned something to me and I thought this was really important about the spatial element.
Yeah. Well, so I am a lucky owner of a first or second edition. Of Clinic. I have Clinic. I've been an Alban Viard fan for years and years, and it's so great. It's a beautiful production. I love Alban's own graphic design sense, quite frankly. So I was happy with my first edition, but it's literally a game. He produced it himself. Like he cut all the cardboard and stuff like that. So I kind of treasure it. But Clinic is actually one of his more, I will say, oblique games. It's got a little extra. And that's on top of games like Tramways and Small Cities that have a lot going on. But with Clinic, there's a floor. You're going up the floors of the hospital. And that adds this kind of faux 3D element that plays with your brain in an extra way where you've got a 3D space reflected two-dimensionally using these diamond-shaped tiles. And that will definitely work your brain a little extra on top of all the patient management and staff management and room acquisition and placement things that you've got going on. That 3D, 2D thing is a brain twister for sure.
Yeah, so definitely one I'm looking forward to, now that I've actually had some time to look at it and I talked to Suzanne to give her opinion on it. I think it's retailing for me. Well, for us Canadians, it's going to cost us a pretty penny. We're looking at over $100 Canadian. So I think I'm doing like the deluxe version or something because, of course, I must get deluxe, especially because this game I think is going to be hard to get afterward. So I'd throw it out there if anyone else wants to check it out and break their I'm not going to check Kickstarter vow. Just, sneak that one in perhaps. What about you, Suzanne? Anything on Kickstarter that's going, hey, come check me out?
I'll just drop a quick note for Matryoshka because this is a game. It's a little card game. It's a tableau building game centered around those Russian nesting dolls and Matryoshka dolls. And it basically, you get a group of people around and you're trying to set collect and line up your cards vertically and in a line by doll type, but also by kind of the nesting layer that they've got going on. And the way you do it is you have an active player and you secretly sneak her a card and then she gets to look at it and pick which one to take and all this other stuff. There's it's actually pretty simple gameplay, but after you get your cards, you actually get to rearrange your tableau every time. It's very simple, but just puzzly enough. It's got some nice interaction. I love the theme. So I've been a fan of Matryoshka for actually a long time. I actually have the original White Goblin version. Lightman Games has the license now. And I like this game so much. I actually worked to get a copy out of Asia because the Asian license for it went to the Woods Games and they put totally different art on it that I just found. So I had to have it. So I have that. And now I'm going to have another copy of this game because I love what Lightman's done with it. So it's a great card game at its basis. But now what they did is they took the game art that is beautiful, but they've tweaked it to be a little more accessible. So they've tweaked the colors a little bit so that they're easier to read the numbers because there was some gray on black is hard to see. So they've kind of changed the contrast. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. They've upped the contrast and they've changed the art and they've upped the nesting art as well. So I really love what they've done to the game art here that has it feel the same, but it has upped the accessibility, which helps players like me as well that I don't necessarily have colorblind issues or things like that. So I'm in for Matryoshka again. I'm really glad that they are bringing this back. And if you haven't played it, you should definitely check it out. It's a great card game.
So, okay, I'm going to have to look because you have 3 copies. I have 0. I keep seeing it. It was on Kickstarter before. I'm like, I mean, the price is pretty reasonable. So I'm going to have to check it out. It looks very cute.
All right. So let's talk about some games that we have played.
Okay.
Worst segue ever.
Okay, so the first game I'm going to talk about, actually, a song popped into my head every time I see the title. Have you heard the song Patio Lanterns?
What are you talking?
No.
Is that a person's name?
Patio lanterns, they were the stars in the sky. No?
Sometimes I think you just make up songs.
Those patio lanterns lighting up our lives. Patio lanterns.
Patty? Are you saying like burger patty?
Patio. No, patio lanterns.
I thought you were saying like patty lanterns.
No. Now that was not a very good service to Kim Mitchell.
I also have not heard Patio Lanterns, the song.
I felt really Canadian in that moment, so.
Oh, it's Canadian. Oh, that explains a lot. Okay, I got it now.
There you go. Look it up. You're welcome, America. And everywhere else, for that matter, in the world. All right, moving on to the game. So the game that I'll be talking about today is not Patio Lanterns, but Lanterns Dice Lights in the Sky. Wow, that is actually a lyric in the song. It's designed by Chris Bryan. Artist is Jason D. Kingsley, John Schulters, and Beth Sobel. Published by Foxtrot Games and Renegade Games. It retails for about $25 US and $25 Canadian. And for those who are new to the show, we take these prices from game stores online. Specifically, I look at Board Game Bliss for Canadian prices and Cool Stuff Inc. for the US. This game is not out yet, but will be in a couple of weeks at the time of this recording, but is available for pre-order. Plays 2 to 4 players in about 30 to 45 minutes. So, Lanterns Dice, Lights in the Sky, is different from the original Lanterns game. Now, I haven't played that one for a while, so Suzanne might be able to help me with the comparison at the end, but I'll tell you what the game's about before we jump into that. So, it's basically a roll and write game. And in this game... Oh, wow. Did I say something wrong?
No, I said woohoo.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like, gasp. So, to start this game, so basically it's going to happen over a series of rounds depending on the amount of players that you're playing with. And, well, there are dice which are representing the different kind of lanterns. So each player is going to receive a sheet of paper, and they have these kind of squares, which they call pools, all over them. And they're split into two, so 2 areas makes up a whole pool. I hope you're following me so far. Each player gets a sheet, and the sheets are actually designated with a different letter. So my sheet might be A, Suzanne's might be B, and other players can be C, and so forth. The one of the main things that are affected are the bonuses, but we'll talk about that shortly. So let's just jump right in. So on a turn, you're going to see we have this tray for the dice, and it's like a plastic tray with like a square middle, and there are 4 dice that are going to be rolled if we're playing with. So we'll start with the 4 players because makes it a bit easier. So we take all 4 dice, roll them, and you want to roll them in the tray. Be careful, it's a little bouncy. And the active player rolls the dice, they're in the tray, and then gets to determine which player gets what die. And they do this by kind of orienting the tray a certain way. So if there are a couple of orange dice in there and there's a blue and maybe a green, they're like, I want the green die. They'll turn the tray so the green die is toward them. And then any other player around the table, whatever die is facing them, is the one that they're going to get to shade in on their sheet. Now, they're only shading in an area. And if you remember what I said before, an area is half of a square and matching the color of your die. So the active player basically gets to orient it, but everybody gets to fill in whatever color is facing them. In addition, the active player also gets to fill in another bonus. So there's a column to the right of the sheet, and everybody has it. And for each round, it mentions when you are the active player for this round, you get to fill in an additional area matching the color that's stated on your sheet for that round. Now, filling in certain areas or pools also has a few other bonuses. You'll see some other symbols on the sheet, such as, which one do we want to start with? Let's start with pavilions. So pavilions are great because, well, they give you gifts, and who doesn't like a gift? So if you fill in a half, so an area, and it contains a kind of a yellow circle, which is the pavilion, it gives you a gift. So you can mark that down at the bottom of your sheet. Now, gifts are great because they actually are great for doing a reroll. So you can spend them to do a reroll, but you can also use them toward Emperor gifts. And these are going to give you bonuses. And we'll talk about those at the end of your turn. So hold that thought in mind. When you fill in a platform, So you're filling in a pool, which is a full square, and it has a platform. This allows you to fill in an adjacent area, half of a square, from that platform. So, it helps you fill in your sheet a little bit more. Then we also have boats. Boats are for endgame scoring, and here's the tricky thing with boats. You do not want to shade in where the boat is. You want to shade in around the boat, all the areas around the boat. And by doing so, you'll get points. But if you shade in where the actual boat is, you won't get points for that. After all of that, the active player, so only the active player, gets to now choose a firework. So the fireworks come in different kind of Tetris-like shapes, and they get to place one on their sheet. But in order to do so, they have to make sure that whatever shape they're placing, it's entirely shaded on their sheet. So they're going to kind of cover that area or those areas. It's important to try and get those fast because they're placed in descending order. So the top one is higher and then it goes to the next highest value. So you want to try and get on those pretty quickly. After that, even before we get to the fireworks, my apologies, you get the use of the Emperor card. So remember I told you about the pavilions and you get gifts? Well, the gifts are going to help you use these Emperor type cards, which will give you bonuses. Like, for example, if you spend 3 gifts, you'll be able to use any other die that you weren't allocated this round. That's pretty awesome. So gifts, very useful. So after you use the gifts, then you would place your firework and then it moves to the next player. So you do this for a certain amount of rounds, dependent on how many players you have. And then at the end, I think there's one final chance where everybody gets to place a firework if you're able to do so. And then the game ends. And then you score points for your boats and for your Tetris pieces. Your firework pieces. I gotta be careful. And highest points wins. So we played this at lunch hour and we did manage to play out a full game. And we really enjoyed it. We were kind of sitting there, is this similar to Lanterns? I'm like, I hadn't played Lanterns for a long time, but I don't remember it. I remember it being different than this. So overall, I think we really liked the fact there were so many fun, different things going on. Like I was really focusing on the boats. Somebody else was focusing on getting areas. Oh, and that's another area that ends up getting scored is having your second largest area scored. So for me, that's something I always forget when I play this game, and I end up making one big connection and having nothing else for my second, so I get a big fat 0. But then I focus on boats and I'm getting scoring there, where someone else might be focusing on getting that second largest area to score, or really focusing on fireworks, getting all those shaded areas in and triggering things in order to get more fireworks placed on their sheet. So I did like that variety of elements. I did mention the dice. The dice tray, they do tend to bounce out, so you can't be too aggressive. Think of Happy Gilmore, when he's trying to get, and he goes, just tap it in. It's kind of like that. Just roll it in, but gently. But I liked the concept of it. You just have to be really gentle with how you're working with that. But I actually really enjoyed the way that was kind of set up. So overall, I liked it. I just like the variety of things you could do. And it is different from what I remember of the other Lanterns games. So if you had both, you wouldn't feel like it was redundant. So have you played this one, Suze?
Yeah, I have. I've played it a number of times now.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, I think it feels like Lanterns, the roll and write game in a good way. Like I get the connection. It makes sense to me with kind of that added layer of the fireworks shapes on top of it. I really agree with everything you say. We've really enjoyed our plays. It felt like there was enough flexibility that you could actually be a little bit strategic. You could, I think I will start off by saying I'm really liking the game. Absolutely a great roll and write game. If I had nitpicks about it, it would be some of the colors can be a little hard to tell apart.
Yes, and I'm going to jump in there if you don't mind, actually. And I had this on my notes and I missed it. I played with someone who was colorblind. And they had a hard time seeing it. They actually had to use their phone. They have an app, I guess, to see some of the colors.
Interesting.
But they said the shapes helped them a little bit, so they were able to discern it a bit better. They were still difficult, but at least they had that. Sorry for jumping in. That was something else.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the lanterns are all different shapes to help with, but because they're so small, I can see where that would be challenging. They say you should color in the triangles, but we found we were outlining them because it was faster. Right. But then depending on the color pen, if you wanted to play extra strategically, you would be arranging the tray of dice so that you would be trying to deny other people a die that could be potentially. And we just found that we kind of actually gave up on that because it was too hard to see what other people were doing to really play at that level, which was okay. It didn't diminish our fun per se. And yeah, so I don't think anything was a barrier to enjoying the game. We really, really liked it. The dice are great. And the race for the pieces felt smart and interesting as you were trying to keep an eye on people. And that was definitely something too, maybe a little harder to do, is making sure that you're always aware of what other people were going for. But I think Later's Dice is a real winner. Yeah.
No, it's good. And I'm looking forward to playing it again. I just taught it at Ottawa Comic-Con to a few people. And the first thing they said, so when's this available? So I think it's going to go over very well. I quite enjoyed it.
Awesome. Next up, I wanted to talk about a game called Villagers, which is really kind of a generic name. And it's actually one of the things I don't like about the game.
Oh, no.
It's tough. In such a busy market, it's hard to stand out. And I think that when you name your game Villagers, the title just doesn't pop. It doesn't necessarily communicate much about the game up front, which, can not be is not necessarily a great thing. Mm-hmm. But before we go too far into that, Villagers is published by Sinister Fish. The game design and art is by Hakon Garter, and it retails for about $26 for the base game. Now, Villagers is actually a tableau building game that uses drafting. And when I say drafting, I'm actually talking more of a Rochester style draft, which is an open draft. So you have cards laid out on the table that you're pulling from. It's not a purchase thing because it actually doesn't cost you any money or any resources to take a card off of the market into your village pool. So it's really a drafting game, but an open draft. And then you're using these cards to build a tableau. And all the cards represent different villagers, hence the title of the game. So it does make sense to that effect. You have a fairly wide range of villagers. You have, and they fall into 9 different suits or 9 different types. So there's the grape suit, the lumber suit, the ore suit, things like that. And the suits are actually on the back of the card. So if you look at the back of the card, you know what suit that card is in, but you don't know what the specific villager is on the front. So you're going to have this market of cards out, and you're going to have stacks that are face down, that are all shuffled up. And then you're going to have some cards face up. And on your turn, you're going to take a card and put into your pool of cards and go around until you reach your food limit. So depending on how much food you have in your village, that determines how many cards you can draft, up to 5. And then depending on how many buildings you have in your village, that determines how many new cards you can add to your village, up to 5. So you can either pick the card face up that you want, or because you can see the back of the card, if you're looking for something or you're really trying to engine build in a certain area, you can actually draw from the top of the stack face down, and you at least know that you're getting the suit that you want. And I actually thought that was a really nice strategic touch to the game. As you're adding these cards, all the cards are very different. They play off of each other in different ways. They score points in different ways. There's definitely a strong engine building element to it. So, like I said, maybe unique cards that let you grow your ability to draft and add cards. So you're looking for cards with food or buildings. Or maybe you're going for a card that really benefits from having a lot of lumber in your village. So you're doing that kind of thing. There's so much variety in the cards. It's great. And it gives you viable options for different strategic directions. Now, some of the twists in this particular game, beyond just drafting cards and playing them in set collection, is that cards have a couple of different kinds of prerequisites. So there's a lot of information on the cards, and it does take a little bit of time to really grok the anatomy of a card so that it feels intuitive. But basically, let's say you want to get a weaver. You have a weaver, and the weaver's worth 12 points. Well, you'll see on the weaver, first, you have to have a shepherd out. And then on top of the shepherd, you need to have a spinner. So if you have a shepherd and a spinner out, then you can play the weaver. So you really have to build up to certain things. And when you take those cards, when they become available, that kind of thing, that starts to play. And you're like, oh, well, it's the first round. I have a Weaver. That's worth 12 points. But it's going to take me a number of turns to get there. So do I want to take it? Do I want to let it go? What do I want to do there? And then there are cards that are quote unquote locked. And that just means that, let's say you want to play the Cobbler and you have to have the Tanner out first. Well, then if Mandi, you have the Tanner out, I can actually use your Tanner to play my Cobbler. I just have to pay you some money.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. And it's not a blocker, and money is points in this game. So you basically have to pay 2 points to get it out, but maybe that's a benefit to you long term. So you go through, it plays, there are 2 scoring phases. So when the first couple of piles of cards empty, you have a mid-game scoring, and then you have the end-game scoring. And the piles are seeded based on player count. So it does scale based on player count. And there are some cards that only score at endgame, and there are some cards that score at mid and endgame. And finding that balance is really interesting as well. So it's very simple. Draft cards, play cards, try to build some synergies, build those chains where you can layer on top of each other for big points, that kind of thing. I really like the art style. It's a little distinct. It's very clean. It's very iconographic in a way. And there's actually a lot of detail to the art. When you look at it, it actually has a lot of character for each of the different types, whether it's a brewer or a cooper or a lumberjack. They're all different art. And I really like that style of art personally. There's something in the rhythm of the game that just works. It's nice that you're not fiddling with currency to buy cards. You're just doing that and getting it out in front of you. I have really, really enjoyed my plays of Villagers. There's just something about the game that clicks for me. I will say that every time we've played, this comment has come up. Is this the right length of game? Huh. It's not a long game. It works really well, but it almost feels like, is it too short? We go into that first scoring very quickly, and you feel like, oh, I wish I could have done more. And then about 3 or 4 rounds from the end of the game, you're like, oh, I don't feel like I have enough time to do everything I really feel like I should be able to accomplish. And we have these cards that are late in a chain. How the heck can I get them out? But even though we've had that thought multiple times, by the end of the play, we're like, no, look at my village. This feels pretty good. I feel good about what I've gotten out here. And scores have generally been reasonably tight. There hasn't been like a runaway leader or somebody. It felt fairly well balanced on that front. So Villagers, an open Rochester style drafting game with some tableau building, really fun art that I really like. I think it's a real winner. And I think honestly at that price point, it's definitely worth a try.
I've been seeing this around. Is this one that was from Essen or... I've seen it.
It was on Kickstarter.
Oh, maybe that was it. Okay, so it was a Kickstarter.
So Kickstarters are just starting to deliver now, I think.
I understand.
Or it's Kickstarter delivered and now it's hitting the shelves or something like that.
I think I remember seeing this one and kind of going, oh, it was really good. But I think it had something to do with the cost to come to Canada potentially, where I had to leave it. So, well, glad to hear it's good because I might have to check it out.
Okay, Mandi, are you going to sing?
No. Should I?
You can sing. I just figured you'd sing so you say you want a revolution, but...
I actually wasn't going to, but you are welcome to take over the singing torch.
Oh, ain't nobody wants me to do that.
I think after my rendition of Patio Lanterns, I may never be asked to sing on the show again. So with that in mind, a revolution has started, well, in 1828. So I'm looking at Revolution of 1828. And this is going to be a joint one. Suzanne and I both have played this one, so we're both going to discuss it. Designed by Stefan Feld. And the art is by Alexander Jung, and the publisher is Renegade Games and Frosted Games. So this retails for about $27 Canadian, and I think it's about the same US. This is another one that's on pre-order, and I think, again, it should be out within a couple weeks at the time of airing this show. It is a 2-player game and takes about 30 to 60 minutes to play. So I'm doing this solely on memory here. I didn't have the rulebook available with me, and it's actually not online. So, Suzanne, you got to keep me in check if I missed anything.
Oh, I'm ready to correct you left, right, all day long.
Oh, lovely. Oh, boy. Oh, I better get right into it. So, to give you a bit of background about the game, I got to start by saying, I was like, what's so significant about 1828? And nobody better be like, how do you not know this? First of all, I'm not American, okay? And so it wouldn't come to mind. But it really isn't just a year that stood out to me. And apparently this was the year where I guess it was John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson were candidates for elections. And it was America's first smear campaign. So I was like, that's cool. Way to make history interesting. All right. So there you go. So something factual. So in this game, I think it takes place over 4 rounds, if I'm not mistaken. And please excuse me if I get some of the terminology incorrect, but you'll understand the actual game. So when you're setting up the game, there's a board, and it has like columns of colors, like they're kind of separated into strips of colors. So on one end you have the press, and then they have other kind of locations. And I think there's red, blue, yellow. I might be missing another color.
Right, Mid-Atlantic, North Atlantic, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And it splits the board up like this.
Which ultimately, the actual location name doesn't really matter. Red, green, white, blue, whatever.
Right. You get the idea with the colors, right? And there's a certain amount of those. Making sure you know the press, even though it looks the same, it functions slightly differently when we get to scoring. Then we have these, I think they're called electorates, if I'm not mistaken, or something to that effect. Delegates? Sorry, that's it. Delegates. No, the delegates are the tokens, I thought. Yes, the delegates are the tokens, the electorates are the meeples. I'm pretty sure. Okay. We're going to go with that. So, I'm pretty sure. So the meeples are placed on each of their corresponding colors. So the blue goes on the blue, white with white, and so forth. And they're kind of placed in the middle because those are going to move potentially in the game depending on who cleans out that area with the tiles. Then we're going to take 3 tiles from our satchel, and that is comprised of delegate tokens, and those will be like the faces of, the different candidates. Then they have the smear tokens are also in there, and then we have, I don't know their technical name, but they're kind of like bonus type tokens. And what's going to happen is you're going to draw from this bag 3 tiles and place 3 of them on each kind of colored area of the board. During the game, what we're going to do is we're going to take turns pulling these tiles off, and they all have different functions. So if you decide to take from an area, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to gain, so to speak, control of an area. You want to have the most tiles of a certain color so you can kind of win that area. So, for example, if I go into the blue area and I pull off a red delegate tile, I will take that token, and put it on the course underneath the corresponding kind of color, just on my side of the board to show, hey, I'm kind of leading in that area now. If you take off a bonus token, you basically do whatever the bonus of that token is. Some of them are not anything great, and some of them are great because it gives you additional turns or maybe dictates what another player has to do. Then there are the smear tokens, which act like a delegate token. So they basically give you like an additional vote. Those are good for the moment, perhaps not for later. When you've cleared off a particular section of the board of color, you get to move that meeple. We're going to call it meeple for right now. You get to move that meeple to your side of the board. So it doesn't do anything for you right now, but it actually, that's wrong, gives you an additional turn. So if it comes to you, get an additional turn. And for scoring, it's going to give you additional points. Hope you're following me so far. When you use these bonus tokens, something to note, they kind of go to the side because if you have more than your opponent, you're going to get points for those later as well. The press. If you win, the press meeple, so basically what's going to happen is once all the tokens are cleared off the board, and let's just say in our game, I was playing with Suzanne, and I had the press meeple on my side of the board. Yeah, not so good.
Not good.
Not good. So what that does is basically, I have to give Suzanne points. So for every smear token I have, the press is like, oh, I've caught their eye. For every smear token that I have to give Suzanne a point for each one that I have because I've kind of pushed the press onto my side and I've caught their attention. Not so good. So you get, I give points away for that, but we get points for having the most bonus tokens. So if I had the most bonus tokens, I would get a certain amount of points. Then we get points for winning an area.
Majority control, essentially, yeah.
Exactly. And then if you have the meeple that's on your side, that also gives you additional points. So I believe it's 4 rounds. So you basically do that for 4 rounds, and then at the end of the rounds, you count. Whoever has the most points wins. If I missed anything in there, please, Suzanne, throw that out there.
I think the only other thing I would add is the press tokens add up. So the board clears between rounds, except for those smear tokens.
Thank you.
So they stay on whoever's side has those smear tokens, and they add up. So by the 4th round, you could have 6 of these things in front of you, and it definitely changes the dynamic around, or the pressure around taking that editor token, the editor pawn. You don't want to be the one to do it then.
And it's enticing because the smear tokens count as a vote.
Yes.
So you have to place it. It's like, well, I'll place it over here so I can win this area. So it's really enticing that you're like, oh, I can take it. But at the same time, if people are counting it out properly, assuming you're going to take certain tiles, they know that potentially you will get that press or, editor token, meeple, and then you're going to have to give away points. And you're right. Like, they accumulate. And that's how I won my game with a friend, because they were taking a lot of those smear tokens, and I was like, they assumed that I was going to take certain colored tokens because they're like, oh, she wants to win majority. Heck no. I let him have I let him have the press token. The way that I sorted it out, I kind of forced him to take the press meeple, and then he was basically bleeding points because, I was more interested in letting him give me points than trying to get majority in certain areas. So at first we kind of went, I don't know about this game at first, because it seemed kind of wishy-washy, like, oh, it's going to be super predictable who's getting what. But then people haven't played with me, and I don't do the typical, she's going to take that one because of majority. No. I'm going to take this because it's easy points, so let's go this route. So I definitely had a felled feel to me.
Oh, interesting.
Which is funny because someone else is like, I don't know. I'm like, no, it still did. Like, the theme is not at all. But I actually felt thematic in a weird way. Maybe because of the terminology, and we were actually using the terminology. And I'm like, well, I need this vote. And I don't know. I got into it. So the theme actually was applicable here, and I felt it. It felt feldy to me because you had a few different elements going on, and you kind of had to choose a focus. I find with Feld that happens. You get like so many things going on. Yeah, you can dabble here, dabble there, but there's always that underlying thing that you have to build a little bit. And it's funny because people are like, oh, you really have to plan in Feld. And I always find as a tactical player, I can really just kind of use my, tactical moves and it works out. And I still felt like I could do that with this game, even though it was 2-player and you didn't have as many actions as in his other games, but it's also a 2-player game that you play in 30 to 60 minutes. His other games are played over a longer kind of span of time. So I actually enjoyed it. It was nice because I actually didn't know the significance of 1828 and this revolution. So I learned something new. But like I said, at first we were a bit unsure about how it was going to play. But overall, I enjoyed it. I mean, it is on the lighter side. I expected that. And it's a 2-player. So I didn't find it. Well, no, it's mean. it can be mean.
Oh, for sure.
It can totally be mean. So if you're not into that, kind of take that. And I'm usually not, but it's Feld, so it gets a pass. And I'm not mean in the game. Well, my friend might beg to differ, but it can definitely be a mean game.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It didn't feel like a Feld to me. It felt like so for me, solid 2-player game. Solid 2-player game. I have a lot. I am a huge fan of the Mayfair 2-player line and the Cosmos 2-player line. I have a lot of those in my collection. And Revolution of 1828 fits right into that category, but it fits right into that category. So is the games that you might, a little bit of Lost Cities, this lane control thing a little bit. I guess that's not a great analogy now that I'm actually processing this, but it's got that lane play, but the scoring is very differently. It didn't necessarily feel Feldish to me, but I defer to you. You're far more the Feld fan. Don't get me wrong, I love Feld, but
sure,
I can't compare to your fandom level. There were a few production issues that held back our enjoyment of the game. So the bonus tokens are brown and the smear tokens are black.
Yeah.
But ultimately, in practice, they are similar enough. The brown is dark enough that you have to take an extra second to figure out what am I looking at. Then what this game desperately needs, in my opinion, is a player aid. The back of the rule book serves as a player aid that I want, but there's only one rule book. And so we were literally in multiple plays. I've played this game 5 times now. In multiple plays, we are every turn, you're passing the rule book back and forth to reference what those bonus tokens are. There's 8 of them. 9 of them.
Yeah, there's
a lot of different types. They all do something different. And the art is not distinct enough to instantly understand which token it is until, I mean, you'd have to play this a lot to memorize
absolutely
which one is which. And just a little player aid would really help. Or if they'd veered away from art and come up with some kind of icon system that would have shown on the token what the action was. I could understand iconography for this might have been tough. So, but I really wish I'd had a personal player aid. So I probably will like print one off, like print the back of the rule book off and throw an extra one in the box just so we don't have to pass it back and forth. I really enjoyed the game. It felt strategic, but it seemed like we played it and then I played a game where I made a distinct decision. It felt like, and maybe this is just my friend's meta, there are 3 tokens in each lane. The moves were almost always draining each lane down to 2 tokens and then trading back and forth how you were going to take different, isolate down to a single. Because once there's only 1 token, then your opponent can take it and get the bonus turn and all this other stuff. And so it seemed like we were just always balancing out, getting each lane down to 2 and then playing from there. I played a game distinctly not doing that. I made a conscientious decision to not do that. And it threw off the rhythm for me for sure. Now that said, there's a lot of variability in where those tokens are. There's a big difference if you have
the types,
like which bonus tokens are in which lanes and how they stack and how many of them are there and which things like that. Is there only 1 white token out on the board overall and 2 smear tokens? And I guess it does feel Feldian in that it is actually pretty strategic. You can look at the board, you can really assess, you can math out, okay, it's not possible to get majority here, or you can get majority in green or white, but not both, and that kind of thing. And you're making decisions in advance from there. So it actually was fairly strategic in that sense, but I like the game that the actions are meaningful and interesting, but the way to distinguish them was disruptive to flow. And I'm trying to figure out if it stands out enough for me. And I think right now I'm solid with it because of some of the things where you're like strategizing, and because of the variability of the tokens coming out, it's a new puzzle every time. And I like that. I can see, though, where people who are like me that have extensive 2-player collections, it may just not have enough to bump it over to be an addition. But if you are newer to the hobby or don't have a lot of 2-player games and you are a Feld fan and the mechanisms of this game appeal to you, it's definitely worth a try. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is an interesting point where I think with the glut of games coming to the market, how do you differentiate that kind of thing? And what does your current collection look like? For me, Revolution of 1828, it feels like a what does your collection look like game.
Right.
If it's light on 2-player games and this kind of game appeals to you, great. If you've got a ton of 2-player games, you're going to want to try it first.
Yeah, and I have to agree. I don't generally play a lot of 2-player games because I have larger groups, so they don't hit the table too often. So for me, because I'm a Feld fan, because I don't have a ton of 2-player games, this is something, you're right, that would sit in my collection. Remember how I was saying we were unsure at first? It's for the reason you just said. Like, it was that whole kind of back and forth, got it down to 2, and then it was kind of predictable a little bit about who would potentially take what. But then the next round came out, and we literally had 1 smear token. And then my friend's like, oh, I totally didn't think you were going to do that. And I'm like, well, no, I'm going to make you give me points. So I went a totally different strategy. So that's why I was saying unsure at first, because I'm like, okay, is this gonna be one of those games where you can just count and it's gonna figure itself out and it's not gonna be enjoyable? But no, the randomness of the tokens really makes a difference. Well, for me, it's a definite A+. It's gonna stay on my shelf, but I mean, yes, because it's Feld, but also because it's a good game. It will definitely stay on the shelf, but I definitely think you have to hear what Suzanne's saying. And if you have a lot of 2-player games, play it first to make sure you think, hey, is this good enough to stay on the shelf? But I think overall we can both say that we enjoyed it.
All right, let's get away from 1828 and get into 3828.
Oh my goodness.
Well, best segue ever.
Wow, I think that's worse than mine.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrible. All right. I want to talk about a game set in the future. Mandi, it's just your favorite thing. Space. Space game.
Yay.
Woo! Beta Colony from Rio Grande Games, designed by Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback, better known as Ridback sometimes.
Why do I think of Harry Potter when I hear their names? I don't know why.
Well, because Tom Marvolo Riddle was a character, right? That was he who should not be
That's
named,
exactly why
right?
I think of it. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Beta Colony has art from James Davis. There's no wizards in this game.
That's unfortunate.
Just science. Thank you very much. So, and it retails for about $60 in the US. Now, Beta Colony, I feel, is maybe a little under the radar right now. So I'm glad I get a chance to talk about it. I think without a doubt, Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback, those are designers I typically appreciate and value their work. So I'm going to take a look at a game that they design, period. And that's definitely the thing that drew me to it. This is a dice and rondel-based action selection game. You have, everybody gets their own little set of 4 dice. There's red, green, blue, and another color. I think black. Let's go with black. So there's 4 different colored dice. Each get a set. The active player each turn is going to roll these dice, and then all the other players will match their dice to that roll. So you all have the exact same roll to play with. And then you're going to use those dice to take 2 actions in a round. And the way you take an action is one of the dice you will choose. You have 4 to choose from. You can make whatever choice you want to. One of the dice will be used to move your rocket ship around the action rondel. So the number of pips determines the number of spaces you're going to move. And the other die you decide to choose will ultimately determine the strength of the action you take. So let's say I use a 2. I'm going to move my rocket ship 2, and then I land on the space that gives me water. And I'm going to use a 6 die. So then I'm going to get 2 water plus a bonus water because I'm using the right color die for that section. Great. Turn over. And then you turn, that's it. Like you're going around the rondel, you're taking action, you're using the die to manipulate, to go around the rondel, and then you're using another die to determine the strength of action. You're going to be gathering resources. And then ultimately what you're trying to do are get these colony pods, AKA hexagonal tiles. And there's a little market of these hexagonal tiles out. And again, when you move your rocket ship on the rondel to the section that allows you to take a tile, the value of the other die will determine which tiles you have access to. So there's some tiles in a 6, some tiles in a 5, some tiles in a 3-4 slot, that kind of thing. And when you're going to take these tiles, there are 3 what they call colonies, which are hex grids at the bottom. You're going to take a tile and place it down there, put your little duty dude on it, your little jazzy meeple guy, and ultimately you're doing that to score points. When you put a tile down there, you can move up the influence track on that colony, which will also give you bonuses and points and that kind of thing. Now, there's some intricacies to it. The resource management is interesting because you're going around the rondel and you can get 2, 4, 6 different types of resources, I think. When you take a tile, so when you take that tile action, you have to pay the resource that matches the tile type. So if I take a blue tile, I have to pay a blue resource. And then you're putting that tile down in one of those colony spots. So a couple of factors come into play. Which colony do you want to go into? So which one do you want to move up the influence track on? Which one's offering you the bonus that you need? Or which one has some endgame scoring goodness going on that you want to continue on? Like maybe you're working for a cluster of colony pods, or maybe you're working for a specific placement of colony pods, that kind of thing. And then what is the resource on the board, because you pay a blue to get a blue tile. You can put that tile on any color spot on the board. You have to pay that matching color resource. So if I take a blue tile and I put it on an orange spot, I have to pay a blue to get the blue tile, and I have to pay an orange to put the blue tile on an orange spot. So there's some interesting resource management as you're going around and gathering these resources, planning ahead where you want to go, looking at the market, seeing what tiles are available, and really thinking ahead. I have to have these resources out in order to make this stuff happen. And I really, maybe I sound enthusiastic, I really like that element of the game. Now, you play over 9 rounds, and it's broken up into 3 phases. You're going to play 3 rounds in a phase.
Okay.
And each phase has a special thingy. So it's going to have, and this is randomized, so it adds some variability. It's going to have some condition. So maybe you're going to get bonus resources, or maybe you have to spend more time. It can be kind of a boost or kind of a drag, but it impacts everybody equally. And then there's some scoring bonus. So it'll give you 1 goal for that round that if you achieve, you're going to get some points. And so you play through those 3 phases, 9 rounds in total, 18 total actions. Bob's your uncle, game's done. It's quite simple mechanically, which again, I very much enjoy. I have played it at multiple player counts, and I will say I like how this one scales. I just played it the other night at 2, and I was impressed with how snappy it felt. It felt very quick, but still rewarding to play. And I didn't feel cheated out of any of the gameplay experience that way. It felt a little different, but still really, really good. So that's one thing I wanted to call out. The scaling is great there. I love rondel games. I love games that use dice in the way that they do here, where it's not quite worker placement, but I love how you have these choices to make about what die are you going to use to move around? What resources do you need? What value of the die do you have? Now, there's a resource called fuel, and that helps you adjust the die, so you're not totally beholden to the dice. I really like that they have this fuel thing that lets you tweak them if you need to. I think there's just enough of that you don't feel tied down to limiting die rolls, so I thought that was really well balanced in there. And there's enough scoring options. There's a lot of other stuff, of course. There's bonus tiles that you can get that give you extra scoring abilities, that kind of thing. But just overall, the rondel, the dice manipulation, the way that the resource management to get those colony pod tiles, the influence track management, all of that, for me, it just comes together very, very nicely. It feels like it's a thorough game experience, but it plays very smoothly. It doesn't take too long. I mean, it's not a 30-minute game by any means, but Beta Colony is definitely worth a look. I will say there's some color choices on the tiles that are a little tough. There's orange and yellow and red. That kind of thing. I mean, a lot of games have that problem. So, an unfortunate thing here, but not necessarily a game killer. So I would definitely say if you haven't checked out Beta Colony, go look it up, take a closer look. I've really enjoyed my plays.
Where have I seen this? What was this? What platform was this kind of sent out at? Was it a Kickstarter? Was it just?
No, it's
a launch.
Maybe you've seen it on social media or something. I don't want to disparage the publisher because Rio Grande has a beautiful history in obviously analog games, but I would say Rio Grande isn't necessarily known for great marketing in North America.
Right.
So maybe you've seen it on social media, but it wasn't a Kickstarter or anything like that. It just kind of popped like a daisy out of the ground.
So they know. And one last question, because I have to ask, because it's going to come. Since we talk about dice games, something like this, well, dice, they're just so random, How do I mitigate that? Or can I? It's a bunch of luck. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. It is a bunch of luck. And I think what's interesting is the fact that everybody has to synchronize their dice. So everybody has the same random, if that makes sense. I think that's an interesting element. And then I mentioned the fuel that lets you change the die faces. Every fuel lets you tick it up or down one. So if that's how you like to play, that's how I play. So I make sure I get a lot of fuel. Right. And I think that that's just fine. But the fact that everybody synchronizes their dice, yes, it's random, but everybody's dealing with it the same way.
Oh boy, Beta Colony. Beta Colony?
Mm-hmm. Beta
Yes,
Colony.
I'm going to have to check this out. Let your fingers do the walking in. Tap that app.
All right, Mandy. I am not to bury the lead or anything. I'm pretty excited about the app we're going to talk about right now. Shards of Infinity. Now, Shards of Infinity is designed by the makers of Ascension. And Ascension is, without a doubt, a seminal deck building game in the hobby at this point. You know, Dominion, Ascension, there was Dominion, and then Ascension brought something new in, right?
Right.
Well, Gary Arendt and Justin Gary have created Shards of Infinity for Ultra Pro and Stoneblade, and people who've played the physical game have really enjoyed it. Now, Shards of Infinity has a gimmick of sorts. So it follows in many ways. Shards of Infinity, if you're familiar with deck building games, Shards of Infinity will feel familiar. It follows a lot of the general rule structures of a lot of other deck building games. Now, Shards of Infinity has a gimmick, and it is the Shard of Infinity. Everybody gets sense. A card, and there is a third resource, and this is a differentiator, called Mastery. And if you manage to gain 30 Mastery points, which will take you a while, if you play the Shard of Infinity, it deals infinite damage. And it's basically an instant kill, instant win card at that point. So there's a lot more to the game, of course, but Shards of Infinity hit the market, and people who enjoy deck builders kind of went, Now, I had no idea that an app was being developed. And when I found out that Temple Gates was making it, I got pretty darn excited, because Temple Gates is the same dev shop that made the Race for the Galaxy app, which I am a huge, huge fan of. And so as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yes, it's going to be a great app. And, well, you know. So Shards of Infinity is available on iOS, Android, and Steam. The base game is $7.99 in the US. I think that is $3,000 in Canada. Right, Mandy?
Pretty close. Yep. I think it's closer to the $10-ish range. Now,
Mandy, have you played this physically or just the app version?
No, I've only ever played the app version. So when you talked to me about it, and I was like, oh, I've actually never heard of this game before. And then you mentioned to me that about the app. So no, I've only played the app.
Yeah. Well, I'll be interested to see. I've played both, so it'll be interesting to see how you view it as just an app. Now, Shards of Infinity will, as I said, it will feel familiar to other. I think comparisons to Star Realms and Ascension are going to be instant and natural. Shards of Infinity has 4 primary factions: the Homo Deus, the Wraith, the Undergrowth, and the Order. And each faction has a slight focus on giving you more health back, or comboing a different way, drawing more cards, that kind of thing. There are champions spread throughout all the different factions. And when you play a champion, most of the time you play all the cards, they do their damage, they give their money, your turn's over, boom. But champions come out and they stay in play. And champions offer a variety of different benefits. They might combo off of other cards, or they might just give you, hey, here's some crystals for every turn until they get destroyed, that kind of thing. And there's also a card type called a mercenary, and those are spread throughout the factions as well. And mercenaries are interesting because you can get them into your deck, and they'll offer whatever benefit they offer, just like any other card. Or you can play them instantly, and they will drop a bunch of damage on your opponent, but then they're burned out of the game. And I actually really like mercenaries for that. I think it's an interesting gameplay element. So yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with deck builders, maybe that's a little too short-handy, and I apologize, but basically you're going to be playing cards out of your hand. They're going to give you some money, or they're going to deal some damage, or they're going to give you some health, that kind of thing. You can spend that money to buy new cards that are available and add them to your deck, and then shuffle up and keep on going until you drain your opponent's life and just whittle them down and destroy them.
It sounds so aggressive.
Right? Super aggro. So yeah, I would argue that there's 4 currencies. There's crystals, which is your money to buy stuff. There's mastery that I mentioned, which is really, I'm trying to think. I think the only reason why you're gathering mastery is well, actually, now that I think about it, yeah, you want to build up to the Shard of Infinity, but actually there are a number of cards that if you have 10 points of mastery, a card you may have gets stronger, that kind of thing. And then power, which is the damage you deal your enemy, and then health, which is obviously how much time you have, and you can gain and lose it throughout the game. I will say, Mandi, and now I know you've played a ton of Hero Realms and a ton of Star Realms. I don't know how much Ascension or Dominion you've played, though.
Dominion is not one I'm super familiar with. Ascension, I have played the app before they removed it. It's a thing. But yes, I did play that for a bit.
I think the comparisons are, like I said, I think the comparisons are going to be made. Is Shards of Infinity different enough to kind of stand in that gap? I will say, I think so.
Just from what I've seen, I would agree with you.
That's great, because before Shards of Infinity came out, I would tell anybody who wanted to listen, Hero Realms, Star Realms, hands down beats Ascension for me. Ascension, I played a ton of for a little bit, and then I got really tired of it, and I'm kind of done with it. Still avidly play Star Realms and Hero Realms and love it. And then Shards of Infinity comes out. They're very similar in many ways, and then different in just enough ways for me. The way the individual factions play out is different than the Star Realms factions. It's just the combos align a little bit differently. The way the cards are structured. I think the way you enter mastery is definitely a differentiator and adds a whole different element. The way you do champions and how those build on it, all of that stuff for me just works as a game. So Shards of Infinity as a physical game, I was on board with. But then you put out this darn app. And I mean, hot darn, this app is great.
It's so clear. And I don't know how to, when I say that, it's, you look at, and I play a lot of these games because I have an Android phone and then I have an iPad. Generally, I will receive a code and it's for an Android, so it's for my phone. But it's a big enough screen that I can still enjoy it. But for me, that's a test, so to speak, because that's where I'll play it most often. And when I say clear, it's crisp. Like I can see everything clearly on my phone. I went through the tutorial. It was very clearly explained. Like it wasn't muddled. Some apps, there's so many things on a screen going on. I was able to follow it, understand it. All of the instructions were very clear to get me to the next stage. The only thing that I worry about, and I don't know if it's just on the Android, the champion is really low on the screen.
Mm-hmm. No, that's the way
you
it's
see.
designed.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know if I like that. For me, I like things a bit more visible or something indicating, hey, like an arrow, something's here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the champions are on a tray. So if you tap that fist icon, it pops the tray up and you can see all your champions.
Right. And I guess for me, it's just a matter of just remembering to do that.
Yeah, I get that.
You know what I mean? So, and that's a minor thing because everything else is so well laid out and clear. I even like the little, and I imagine it makes this noise because yes, I don't play a lot of apps with the sound on.
Yeah.
So I kind of make my own sounds. I hope I don't do that out loud. But like I sense of attack and the little laser goes and I'm like, pew. My mom's like sitting there. She's like, did you just say pew? I'm like, oh, sorry. I was playing a little game here.
I kind of love that. I think the clarity thing is really interesting. I think the AI for the game is pretty smooth overall. I was in the beta, so I saw it evolve over time, and I think that I could see the developer make interesting choices that are going along from an interface point of view. The thing I wanted to call out in Shards of Infinity, if nothing else, besides it just being a great polished app and a really fun deck building game, the developer added a large print option. And a lot of games are tougher to play on the phone because of the scaling and it's harder to read.
Right.
Literally, they created a solution for that and it's flipping brilliant and it works beautifully. In the game, you can toggle a large print option. If you don't, it just looks like the regular card game. You get more focus on the art. If you're playing on your phone, which I am doing, I've toggled the large print. It takes over more of the card, so you see less of the card art. but the print is so much bigger and it takes up much more of the card real estate, and you can see it and read it easily. And it's a brilliant move to make the game more playable on a smaller screen, or for people who prefer larger print just in general. So kudos to them to solving a problem that many, 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 many apps have. And I don't know if I've seen this option before, to be honest. So
I mean, you play way more apps than I do, so you would definitely notice it. But I've not. It's not something that I've come across. And like I said, I play a lot of my apps on my phone. So you would definitely think that that's a staple, right? That's something you always do. But yeah, that's very forward thinking on their part.
So whether Shards of Infinity is an evolution of Ascension or Star Realms or whatever Gary and Justin Gary are doing, I think they have a hit here. I encourage people to give it a try. I can't wait for more cards to come out in expansions. The app is just beautifully done. I think, Mandi, you were saying, I think like my biggest complaint about the app is that if you want to read the rules and you click on it, it takes you to like a PDF on a website. That's just a pet peeve. I don't like it when apps do that. But there's a tutorial in the game that teaches you how to play the game.
Yeah. And that's for me. I'm the type of person, I like the visuals. So for me, I need a walkthrough. And that's why if it has a really nice tutorial, I'm not so worried about the rules being offsite. But I understand where you're coming from. Some people like to have that readily available. But for me, if it has a very clear tutorial, I generally don't need to look at the rule book. So yeah, so for me, I was very happy with the tutorial in this game.
Well, Mandi, we have not played against each other.
Oh my goodness. Okay, listen, I'm really not. I'm sick. I'm just getting over all this stuff. I don't want to be crushed by you, okay?
But I'm so ready to do the crusher.
Oh. In the two-player game, Revolution of 1828, you are trying to become the next president of the United States. To reach this goal, each player tries to take the election tiles that suit you best and hinder your opponent's campaign. If you're a fan of Feld, oh yeah, this girl right here. And, well, if you like some talk of elections, don't forget to check out Revolution of 1828 from Renegade Games and look for it at your local game store or online today. Q&A.
Thank you, everybody who has been sending in their questions via email or direct message on social media, that kind of thing. If we don't reply back right away, maybe that's because we're holding back to bring it up here on air. So let's take a look at a few of those. Nick H. writes in and says, I really appreciated your discussion on abstract games in episode 604. It got me thinking after Santorini was mentioned as a game that had enough veneer of theme to move it out of the abstract grouping, and wondered if we think that applies to Splendor as well, because it has almost perfect information and the theme is unimportant to the mechanics of the game. Also, since so few abstracts handle multiple player accounts, that may influence players' perception of Splendor. Nick also asks me why I think pie is superior to cake. Nick happens to agree completely. Good on you, Nick, but wants to know my thought on that. But Mandi, first, let's talk abstract games.
Okay.
What do you think about Splendor in that context?
I never thought of Splendor as being an abstract game. I mean, I think set collection, that comes to mind, that sort of thing. But to me, it never dropped into that category. I'm not saying it's not. It's just in my opinion and what I think of abstract games, I personally didn't see that Splendor as an abstract game. Now, bear in mind, it's not one of my favorite games, so it's not one that I revisit often, but it definitely didn't kind of say, hey, that's, I feel like that falls into that category. Switching over from that, Santorini, did we say that it had enough theme to move it out of abstract? I honestly just don't remember. Did we say that?
I don't recall. Did we? I would definitely call Santorini an abstract game. Maybe we talked about the components and how it added something or enhanced the experience or enhanced the thematic.
Right.
But yeah, for me, if I said Santorini wasn't an abstract, I apologize. I take it back.
Yeah.
I absolutely view Santorini as an abstract game.
Yeah, me too. So I like, it's funny now looking at it. I'm like, oh, I hope I didn't say that. But if I did, yeah, no, I definitely think it falls into that category. It's kind of like, and I know it's not the same game. So when I talk about chess, but Santorini kind of reminds me of that sort of thing because you're moving pieces, stacking pieces. Anyway, it's very, very like a general thing. And the theme in that particular game, I don't find interferes with that. Like there isn't an overwhelming enough of theme in that game, but that's just my opinion. So, so coming back overall, Splendor to me, I didn't think it fell into that, but what do you think, Suzanne?
I also agree. I never personally thought of Splendor as an abstract game. I think of it as an engine building game.
Right.
And I guess in general, I don't think of abstract games as engine building games. Maybe that's a weird fuzzy line. You could probably find a game that would be really tough for me to categorize between the two, but I don't even think it's the theme that pushes it out of quote unquote abstract territory for me. I think it's really the mechanisms, the randomness of the cards that come out, and that layering where you're growing your strength depending on what gems you've managed to get. It just doesn't feel like an abstract to me. So, so I mean, not for me, not an abstract game. I mean, Mandi, you've played Gizmos a ton, and we've talked about it.
Love it.
I mean, I think Gizmos and Splendor are very similar games.
Don't say that
mechanically, but
okay.
I would never look at Gizmos as an abstract game either. You know,
exactly.
All right, and then Nick, I wish I had an academic reason for pie being. All I can say is that I have felt this way since I was a child. My mother tells me stories about how I was like 4 years old, and for some reason I was really, really sad about something. And my mom said, "Why are you so sad? What can we do to make it better?" And I said, "I want some pie." So pie has been part of my life since childhood. There's just something magical about a perfect, flaky, buttery crust around, delightful, not too sweet, filling, and because pie encapsulates such a wonderful breadth of foods. Quiche, breakfast egg pie, right? Savory pie, shepherd's pie, key lime pie, pecan pie. It's magic. Pie is magic. That is all I can say.
Oh, all the pies. Okay. Adrian D says, and I think this is geared towards Suzanne here. How would you rank the various Tetris roll and write games? I know there are at least 3: Patchwork, Patchwork Doodle, Blocks, and Bricks. Are there more?
Oh, Adrian. Oy. Ranking is always really tough for me to do because it very much depends on mood and kind of the sub niche that the game sits in for me. And to complicate it, all right, let me put it this way. If I had to rank Patchwork Doodle, Blocks, and Bricks, here you go. Blocks is number 1, Bricks is number 2, Patchwork Doodle's number 3. Boom. There you go.
Wow.
But are there more? Yeah, for whatever reason, over the last year or so, there's just been a surge in polyomino-related roll and write games, or flip and write, whatever you want to call them. I love it, but here's a few more for you to check out if you like those kinds of games. Second Chance, Silver and Gold. Lantern's Dice has a polyomino element to it. A game out of Asia called Sweet Stack. Cartographers, which we've reviewed on this show, is polyomino based. And Big Dig from TMG is also polyomino based. And I'm sure there's a couple more I'm missing. So there are many more polyomino Tetris style roll and write games out there for you to explore if you enjoy them.
What's the one you bought in Essen? I was thinking about getting a copy of it, and it was in a pinkish type box. And I remember it was a hard one to find, I think. And you seem to know the designer fairly well, and we had to kind of look for the booth a little bit.
Oh, Tag City. Thank you.
Yes.
Good one.
Okay.
Tag City is another. See, I missed one. Tag City.
I just remember because I was like, ooh, I want that one.
Nailed it. So yeah, there are, in my mind, because I enjoy these kinds of games and I can see the nuance between them matters to me. So for me, there's a ton of polyomino roll and write games and I'm ecstatic about it. All right. Peter T writes in and says that I've been watching long enough to see when you started on Board Game Apps, which is something I do, and the lunchtime segment. Oh, man.
It's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. That was not rehearsed.
Oh, wow.
However, I think we would be interested in the stories about what got you to do those segments and getting on the Dice Tower at all on those weekly segments. I also wondered how Mandi came up with the Board Game Pinup Girl title. I never knew how I should feel about that. Your style does seem to reflect the 1940s style, so I just assumed that it was that or that Mandi had done some kind of modeling.
There's so much truth in this. So much truth. So I guess I'll start with the lunchtime segment because I know that's probably where a lot of people who watch videos knew me from originally. And I'll even maybe start before that, how I even was on the show. So it was a few years ago. I was at an international tabletop day in Montreal, and Tom was there. And I remember sitting beside him. He was playing, I think at the time, he was playing the original titled Century Spice, but it was called something else at the time. And I just remember him going, "Oh, this is so good." And he was so excited about this game. And I'm like, wow, he's really excited about this over there. And I had just started a new channel for fun or whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have a chat with him and give him my card and say, hey, if there's anything you're doing, I'd love to be a part of it. Even if it's something small. And he's like, yeah, that's great. Send me a video of what you're thinking and we'll put it on. And then I specifically chose the lunchtime segment because I actually do play games on my lunch hour with my colleagues. And I didn't realize there were that many people at work that, that like to play games. So it was just another way to encourage people. Hey, you can do this too. Just because I work at my government job and we get a very nice lunch break that we could play it, anybody can do it. But I was trying to show games within that time frame that work. So it was basically just a way to encourage more people to play more games and, hey, set up some things in your workplace. So maybe we'll start off with that part. What about you, Susan? Then I'll go on to the next bit.
It's a long history. I've been doing that app segment for 5 years.
Wow.
I mean, I've been doing Board Game Breakfast for 5 years, and I've actually been off rhythm lately because of all the things. Tom changed the deadline for your weekly segment, and he shifted it up just enough that it completely threw off my rhythm. And so the window of time that I would traditionally do my segment, I lost. It's just but I've really been hankering. There's so many good board game apps that I want to cover. I'm itching to get back to it. But basically, when I started making board game content 5+ years ago, I was looking for a niche that I felt was underserved, that I could feel passionate about. And without a doubt, board game apps was an area for me to do that in. I had no idea what I was doing making videos when I started. It was, easily, arguably today, I still have no idea what I'm doing. And that's totally fair. But I just wanted to cover something that was fun, interesting, and maybe something that wasn't being talked about a lot. And that's where I set on board game apps.
Very cool.
But Mandi, I think it's a great question about your quote unquote board game pinup handle. And you have a distinct, beautiful sense of style. And it would be cool to hear the history.
Yeah, no, sure. And I do get a lot of questions on this. And sometimes people kind of like, what are we talking about? And I know that pinup is it's a big topic and a lot of things go with that. So we'll talk about that in a second, but I'm going to come down to something you talked about, modeling and fashion. And I actually worked in fashion for a long time. I was a makeup artist for a long time. I used to model back in the day. And so definitely I was all about reinventing my style quite often, but I always had a piece of a kind of vintage look. I specifically focused on the kind of pinup type era because that's a time where people like me, a lot of women of color, were not kind of viewed as beautiful. It was not the norm. It was not the societal norm of beauty. So it was just a kind of way of saying, hey, I really love this style and I want to show people, hey, I can do this style as well, make it my own, make it work and say, hey, I can be beautiful. Anybody who takes this style on can be beautiful, and you make it your own. And I think that's where that kind of came from, taking something that was kind of a negative and making it a positive. I don't know if that makes sense. And because I worked in fashion for a long time, fashion is all about reinventing yourself and reinventing things in general. Like a basic white t-shirt is a staple, but it's being reinvented 10,000 times, right, to look fashionable in every kind of decade. So it's the same sort of thing. So I know a lot of people see the name and automatically a lot of negative things come to mind, whether it has to do with nudity or things like that. That is not at all what I'm looking at. It was just the time, the era, and how I could make it a positive. So yeah, that was the history of it.
I'll tell you, I get to travel with you, and I'm always impressed by what you pull out of your closet. And it's got so much personality and style. And I think it's great. I love it, man.
You get to see the behind the scenes. All of you see the after it's done.
It's true. I see the work. Holy cow. Let's just say that look doesn't come together in 3 minutes in the morning.
It sure doesn't. So Jason L. says, I understand you like to scout games from foreign developers. My sister is traveling in Japan right now. Any games I could ask her to get that are hard to get elsewhere that you recommend? So far, I've only asked her to look out for a Coffee Roaster and Let's Make a Bus Route.
Oh, well, Jason, you've got good taste because Coffee Roaster and Let's Make a Bus Route are excellent games. I think it really depends on your game taste. It's a little tough. But based on you saying Coffee Roaster and Let's Make a Bus Route, here are a few more for you. Stone Gardens is one of my all-time favorite games out of Japan. It is very difficult to get to the U.S. for a couple of reasons. One, it's only sold in Japan. Two, it's heavy as heck because it actually has these molded stones in there to mimic the rocks that you might see in a Zen stone garden. They're each unique. There's, 24 or so of these unique rock things in there, and they're gorgeous. I love this game. It's a tile laying game where you have tiles that look like the sand patterns, and you're laying that and strategically placing the stones. I flip and love Stone Gardens. I wish it had gotten wider distribution. It's a beautiful production. It's a great game. I think that if you're over there as well, you'd mentioned Coffee Roaster and Let's Make a Bus Route. I think any Sashi and Sashi game, Take the A Chord is another great one. And I can't remember, darn it now, I'm forgetting the trick-taking game that's coffee as well.
I know which one you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah. I'll see if I can look it up later.
Yeah. So anything from Sashi and Sashi. Akazu is a really big publisher in Japan. Metro X is one of my all-time favorite roll and write games. It's phenomenal. It's by Hisashi Hayashi. And here's one that flies a little under the radar. And I actually reviewed it on the show a while ago, but it's called Ratineer.
Ratineer. That's familiar.
I know. I reviewed it. But
okay, that would be why.
I know that they released Yokohama Duel, and that's great. But if you like Yokohama, Ratineer feels like it's in the world of Yokohama in a weird way. I absolutely love Ratineer. It's quirky and weird because you're like pirate rats, whatever, but it's worth checking out. All right. And then just a few more for you. Anything from the publisher Jigami Games. They do slightly lighter games that have an incredible amount of style and personality. Yamato Games is a publisher that I'm not quite sure about their current publishing status, but they do beautiful little card games like Greenfinger or Aquarium Designer. And all of those I have not been able to really find in the States at all. So I'm envious of your sister traveling in Japan. I'm envious that you have a source for these games because I could always use more myself. So good luck, Jason.
Was the game Blend Coffee Lab?
That's it. Okay. Blend Coffee Lab.
There you go.
Nailed it.
Yay.
Great trick taking.
I got one.
You did good.
I did good.
Alrighty, folks. I think with that, we will call it an episode. Send us more questions. We love to hear from you. Any way you can send an email, Suzanne at dicetower.com.
And Mandi, that's Mandi with an I, at dicetower.com.
As always, thank you so much for joining us. It remains an honor and privilege to be able to talk about board games. And like Mandi goes to Ottawa Comic-Con, or when we go to any convention, we get to meet people. In LA, I got to meet some lovely people who listened to the show, and they said hi. And it's incredibly rewarding to get to meet you and talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us here this week. Next episode is 607, and Tom and Eric continue their journey down the alphabet with top games that start with the letter D. All right, everybody. Until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vasil Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvasil.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandi, and Eric, with assistance from Rob Searing, Roy Canaday, and Jeff Rademacher. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, it is time for Two Truths and a Lie. So we're just going to jump right in, and I'm going to start with mine from last episode. So I went to grade school with Alanis Morissette. I played 4 different characters in a school musical, and I went to prom wearing a designer dress worth over $800. If you chose I went to grade school with Alanis Morissette as the lie, that would be correct. However, I actually did know Alanis Morissette and used to audition at a lot of the same things that she did for musical theater. So we didn't go to school together, but we definitely crossed paths. What about you, Suzanne?
Well, wait a minute. You wore an $800 dress to prom?
Listen, I had a part-time job, and I worked my little buns off, and this dress was beautiful. Beautiful. It was a Canadian designer, and it had like bright pink and light pink flowers on it. It was like a mermaid style. Oh, I went all out, and I was like, listen, I need to look fantastic. I worked hard for it. I deserve it.
I'm going to need a picture of this dress. That's all I got to say. All right. Last episode, I said, I hate nori, I hate raw fish, and I hate wasabi. And the lie is...
the suspense.
That I hate wasabi. I love wasabi. Wasabi's awesome.
Wasabi's so good.
Well, and really, I paused just now because I realized I really messed it up. Because I have 2 lies and 1 truth.
And when you were reading it, I'm like,
I'm so confused. Well, oops, it was bound to happen, right? I love wasabi, and I actually don't mind raw fish. I hate seaweed. I hate nori. I never developed a taste for it. I don't understand how people can enjoy it. When I go out to sushi, there's some restaurants, I don't know if this is everywhere, but they offer a soy paper alternative, and then I can eat sushi. But if it has seaweed on it, I can't eat it.
Really? Oh, yeah. I like the saltiness. I think that's why I like it.
Anyway, what's new for you this week, Mandi?
Okay, well, new this week. Here we go. I'm not a fan of clowns. I'm not a fan of dolls. And I'm not a fan of using public restrooms. All of those things seem a little scary.
All right. It's a week. Holy cow.
What about you?
In a slightly different direction. I hate banana pancakes. I have a banana tree in my yard. And I love banana bread with walnuts.
Well, I sense a theme there, a very strong one. So, good luck, everyone.
Thank you to our sponsors at Renegade Games Studios. Check out Revolution of 1828 and all the wonderful Renegade games at renegadegames.com.